First of all, would you please welcome Amanda Blanc? Those are certainly the most exciting shoes we'll see today.
That's
fantastic. Now, would you welcome Peter Blanc? No relation?
No,
they're rubbish shoes. They're absolutely dull as ditch water. I failed to say that Amanda is from AXA, of course, and Peter, they are, as I say, no relation, was recently of AJ Gallagher's now what's the new company you've started?
Aston Scott Group.
There we are. Aston Scott Group, free plug. Now, Andy Watson is up next, please.
Aegeus is the word you're looking for, Jeremy.
Is it? I couldn't work out whether I should be saying Aegeus.
No. Only if you're Dutch.
You've got dull shoes too. And Julie Page is our fourth member. Now, Julie is from Marsh,
and I've got dull shoes
I'm not going to embarrass you at all by commenting about your shoes. Let's talk first off. This is really your session, so you can ask any question you like, preferably concisely. So a question rather than a speech, if you don't mind. Somebody will come around and give you a microphone once. So just put your hand up so the guys with the paddles can see where you are. And you can put your hand up now and then they'll give you a microphone. But in the meantime, I'll ask on your behalf a question. Do put your hand up now if you've got a question you would like to ask. So please don't be shy. My God, you're reticent. OK. What is this? I'll ask on your behalf as you're so lazy. What is this promise that's supposed to be being delivered? What is it?
It's a promise to pay when you buy.
To pay?
To pay when you buy an insurance
my
policy.
kind of language now. This is good. When you buy a policy.
When you buy a policy, you're just buying a promise. You're buying a promise that an insurer will respond and pay a claim when something disastrous happens. Right. And a promise is fundamental to insurance, and that's what we do.
Andy?
It's difficult to argue with that, absolutely. I mean, that's fundamentally the product and service. So customers, when they buy a policy, should expect to have their claims paid and that to be a very fast and efficient process. I do, however, take no pride whatsoever in the fact that there are surveys now quite commonly showing insurance and insurers as being on the same level in terms of trust and customer satisfaction as estate agents and the like. So absolutely echo Lord Hunt, David Hunt's enthusiasm for the industry talking with one voice so that we can get our story over much better. The promise is really straightforward, but we're clearly not getting that story over.
No, I'm just astonished that you should think there was any question about delivering a promise.
Well,
you make a promise, you honour it, don't you?
And absolutely.
That's precisely the problem.
Yeah, and just for the audience's sake, that's as scary as it looks up here as well.
You're among friends. I mean, obviously they're all on your side. But I just speak as a member of the public. I don't trust an insurance broker.
Well, you've changed your mind since you've got on the stage here. You were telling us earlier how much you liked your insurers, to be honest.
I said I was with the same one because it was the only bloke who'll insure me. But
no, but
what does that tell you?
The stats are very clear. We pay hundreds of thousands of claims. We pay them very efficiently. We pay them very well. This time last year, the country was getting over the fact that it had been flooded and there were storms. Those claims were dealt with superbly well. So the industry has got a great story to tell. It delivers on the promise. I think there is an issue in telling the story, but the story itself is fantastic.
Julie, what do you think this promise is?
I think it's exactly the same thing, but being a broker, I'm just going to layer on an extra message, which is the promise can get quite complicated. And the more complicated it gets, the more likely the promise will be met is when you have a broker providing the advice.
Yeah.
But you see, I guess you'll deny this immediately, but I always take it as a member of the public that you blokes, you're not in it as a charity. As a broker or an insurer, you are not a charity, you're a business. And you're therefore interested, are you not, in selling what is likely to net you the most profit.
But you only sell it if it also delivers what the customer most needs. It's a very
If the
competitive
customer's
marketplace.
too stupid to realise what he needs or she needs, good luck to you.
Our customers aren't that stupid. They're pretty intelligent. It's a very competitive
You're
marketplace.
dealing with the public.
Oh, no, I'm not. They're an intelligent public.
Yeah, but they're not well informed, you see. You bamboozle them with science, don't you?
I think that's a really good point. I mean, they're not well informed because of the language in which we speak to them. So we speak to them in a language which is all convoluted and contractual and legal. And our biggest issue is not in actually delivering the promise, it's delivering a promise in a way and using language that a customer understands. And I think that is our biggest issue, and the CII have recently done...
Have you got an example or two of that?
Well, loads of it. I mean, you know, we talk about loss adjusters. Our customer will phone in and they'll say, we want a claim, we'll say, we want to appoint a loss adjuster. And they'll go, well, what's one of those? If you've never had a claim before, you don't know what a loss adjuster is. We talk about warranties, we talk about liability. I mean, to customers, they just do not understand that at all. And so we have to massively simplify the message, whether we're brokers or insurers, so that the customer... I don't think the customer is as stupid as you would make them out to be, actually. And I think we should give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt.
I'm never quite sure what a loss adjuster is.
No, exactly. I agree.
I think I know.
So we should be much clearer.
Have you got a suggested alternative?
We've got loads of us. I mean, AXA have done a lot of work in this area, so we have got...
What do you call them?
Well, we would say somebody that's going to come out and tell you how much we're going to pay for your claim. But I mean, you know,
Not very snappy, is it?
No, not snappy, but clearer than loss adjuster. Have you got a better suggestion?
No, I haven't,
Oh,
because
well, there you go
as I've
then.
already
So-
told you, had you been listening, I understand why you weren't, but had you been listening, you'd heard me say, I'm not quite sure what they are.
No, and I think most people don't know. But it's not just that, it's all the other words that we use around the claims process as well.
Well, why don't we have a small prize for anyone in this room who can come up with a better, snappy... You'll give them a bottle of champagne, won't you?
I'll give them more than a bottle of champagne.
If they can come up with anyone who can come up with a
something
snappier way of talking about loss adjusters. Have you got an idea? You might. You fancy a
better. You
drink?
daren't say anything now.
This complexity, though, is a huge issue. I mean, 25% of the population are functionally illiterate and cannot understand some of what we actually put out there. So it's a massive problem. And as a broker, you know, we've got to try and deal with members of the public and actually explain what they need and get it over to them in a way that they understand so that they're not let down when something does go wrong.
Your definition of functionally illiterate is pretty... I mean, because they don't understand insurance speak.
Well, that
is not a definition of functionally illiterate. Would anybody like to ask a question from the floor? Yes, can we get them... Yes, over here in the number 2. Okay. Anyone else like to have a go after that? Yes, in the second row here, if you could please give this gentleman a microphone as well. And anyone, we'll take a third one while we're at it.
There's one in the middle there.
There's one in the
Is
middle.
there?
Kevin.
Oh, yes. He's a very retiring fellow, isn't he?
No, he's not,
Yes.
Most people wish you
Oh,
did
he's
so.
a trustee, is he? He's a clerk. Sorry, I can't see what your number is up there. Could you come down to this chap with his hand up in the purple shirt there? He's a bishop, I think. Right, so we'll start with number 2 over here.
Hi everyone, James York from Worry and Peace. I'm a startup, and I think Jeremy's just extolled the PR problem that insurance has as a whole. And as a startup, I'm kind of saddled with the reputation that my forebears have obviously laboured over. Do you think that with Heathrow and Gatwick publicising the need for a new carbon emission airport everywhere, that there's a precedent really for the insurance industry to finally get together and get its act together on establishing a better brand reputation, both for succession, for people coming into the industry to want a job in insurance, and for our reputation so that people like Jeremy don't completely destroy us, rightfully so, for the lack of understanding about all the great things that the people in this room do. Because it'd probably make my job a bit easier to get over the line and grow my business too. So hopefully you guys at the top of the industry can help with that question.
Same sort of field, really, isn't it? I mean, it's clearing the air.
I mean, that's an extremely good question because, and at Aviva, we are spending money on a PR campaign to do exactly that. The difficulty, of course, is when you speak to journalists in the mainstream press, They don't really want stories about, oh, shock horror, insurance companies successfully pay claim. Yeah, that's not particularly newsworthy. What they want is some poor sod being stranded on the other side of the world because their travel insurers won't pay to repatriate them when something hideous has happened. So that's one of the big challenges with PR. But you're absolutely right, and as a profession, if we can get our reputation out there more widely, then that of itself will just be a huge, huge boost from a PR point of view.
Well, can I just suggest the reverse? Supposing it was newsworthy that you guys had paid out, then we'd really be in a mess. Wouldn't we? It's newsworthy when something goes wrong,
yeah.
of course. Anyone else like to take up this idea?
I agree with the point entirely. I think we're quite a quiet profession, and we need to be just a little bit louder and come forward and speak a little bit more frequently about the things that we're doing.
What would you say?
Well, I mean-
they're all independents, aren't they? Most are.
As in insurance brokers?
Yeah.
They are, but there are a lot of... BIBRA is a voice for insurance brokers. The ABI is a voice for insurance companies. And when events like the floods start taking over the media, it's a great opportunity for us to come and talk about what we are doing, rather than the media sort of dominating over issues of underinsurance or no insurance. The insurance companies and the insurance brokers were down in the West Country with the welly boots on, getting involved, getting together with their clients to figure out how quickly they could get them into a better position. And we don't talk enough about the good things that we're doing.
Let's have the question that was down here. I'm sorry, yes, please, sir. Number one.
Hello, Saxon East, editor of Insurance Times. I've got a question for Peter. Looking through the lens of a broker, do you think there's an issue with insurers rejecting too many claims?
I think as over the last few years, CORs, combined operating ratios, the losses that insurers are facing, have crept up. And I think inevitably, as the CORs get close to 100 and over 100, then there are challenges in all insurance companies to actually just to try and make the maths work. And naturally, there's a closer scrutiny, I think, when profitability is a challenge, there's a closer scrutiny on claims. But having said that, all the stats show that when you use a broker, brokers are there to actually make sure claims do get paid.
Peter, that's just
Do you think he's
absolute
answered the question?
No, but it's nonsense. It's also
true.
nonsense. It's nonsense to say that insurers sit there and say, oh, it's all getting a little bit tight on the profit, so what we'll do is we'll issue a new set of instructions to our claims teams to not pay claims. I mean, honestly, do you genuinely think that we
It'd be
sit
interesting
there
to
and
ask-
do
have a-
that?
have a little show of hands
I mean,
of who actually-
it just doesn't happen.
Although,
happen.
just to back Peter up a little bit on this one, and I'm not speaking from sort of personal experience, I'm speaking about something I've seen, which is where there are the wrong kind of incentives put out there about how claims get managed, not necessarily in insurers, potentially with loss adjusters. There have been some interesting incentive programs about how you manage claims and what good looks like. I wouldn't say that comes from AXA. I wouldn't know where that comes from.
I'm struggling to
but
speak because I have
seen
to
them.
regain the power of speech, to be perfectly honest, because the idea that I'm just going to repeat what Amanda said, but the idea that you look at your COR and somehow you get, we give a different instruction to our claims teams is nonsense, absolute nonsense.
No, I mean,
either a claim is covered or it's not, and if it's not, then
Absolutely.
we'll get on with it and pay it, because that's the quickest and the easiest way to do it from an indemnity spend point of view, and it's absolutely the best thing to do from a customer's point of view.
Can I
It's
ask you
just
a
not an
question?
issue.
I've never worked in an underwriter then, so this is me asking a question then of the insurers. And that is, have you never seen an incentive given to a loss adjuster that's about how you keep the claim down?
No. No, I haven't. And genuinely, I don't. I mean,
it depends what keeping the claim down is. The claim has a fair settlement, and the claim gets settled fairly.
Yeah.
Going above that is no good for anybody. Going below that is certainly no good for anybody.
But have there been contracts in existence with loss adjusters where they are targeted to achieve certain claims rejection percentages?
no.
Okay.
You seem to be struck dumb.
No, I am struck dumb. I am struck dumb.
You've never seen or heard of such a thing.
I can only speak on behalf of Ageas. Amanda can speak on behalf of AXA. It's certainly not part of my business. It would appear not to be part of Amanda's, where we are altering our claims philosophy depending on the level of our COR.
It's never happened in your company.
Absolutely.
And it's never happened in your company either.
And to be honest, if we are really managing these claims down to make profit, we're doing a pretty rubbish job of it on the basis that we've got £50 billion worth of premium in every year. We pay out £32 billion worth of claims, and we only make £1.4 billion worth of profit. So we're pretty hopeless if that is what we are trying to do. And, you know, in motor insurance, we've not made any money as motor insurance since I think it was 1993. So, I mean, you know, we're pretty unsuccessful at doing what we're accused of doing. So, Saxon, I don't know where the question comes from. I mean, obviously, we're not perfect in the way we handle claims. Obviously, the process is not perfect. Obviously, there have been issues around things like referral fees and all of that sort of stuff in the last few years. But I would genuinely say that we do not look to not pay claims. We pay the claims according to the policy cover. Now, sometimes, and there's all, you know, and we even know with all the repatriation issues around travel insurance, there are always issues around claims, but there are always two sides to every story too. And I think that's a really important point to make.
That was a great question. Do you want to follow it up?
I think that, you know, my perception at Insurance Times is, to be fair to Amanda and Axon, I know she's made great strides on offering an improved claim service, that Andy's also got a very good reputation for claims, especially with some of the partnerships he does. But I think it's safe to say there are definitely some insurers out there who will look at rejecting claims for various reasons, I think.
Have you come across it professionally?
I know of, you know, some insurance companies who do
Just
it.
a lot of
quite
old
dubious.
anecdotes.
So, two comments, if I may, Jeremy. First of
Please,
all,
yeah.
we've had two comments now that I'm not speaking on behalf of myself, I'm speaking on behalf of a friend. It's not old anecdotes, it's not particularly helpful, is it?
Well, it's like it's cross-dressing, probably.
So I'm speaking on behalf, it's not for me, but it's for my friend. And secondly, we've got to question number 3 before we fail to live up to the call to talk as one voice.
Yes.
We've immediately fallen into insurers versus brokers and vice versa. It's not helpful for the reputation of the industry. It's just not helpful going forward. It's taken 3 questions to unearth it.
Although, Andy, I don't necessarily think that's the case, because I go back to the question that was raised over here, which is, if we don't air these issues and we don't talk about them, and we know that some of them are present, this is by no means a statement about the 2 insurers who are sitting here right now, but we know some of these issues are present in our industry. If we don't air them and deal with them, then the one voice is going to be quite hard to get to.
I mean, who cares whether 2 halves of the industry are speaking with one voice? Your problem is with the public.
And it would be helpful to influence the public, because they don't see, insurers don't see, customers, the public, don't see insurance as broken up between insurers and brokers and personal injury lawyers and claims management companies. They just see insurance. Because why should they be bothered to think about any harder about it than that? They just see it as insurance. And therefore, insurance has got to guard its reputation and promote its reputation. And to do that, we need to be more joined up than we are at the moment.
Or just straight dealing. That would do it, wouldn't it?
There's plenty of straight dealing goes on.
OK, the chap in the purple shirt.
The Bishop, the Right Reverend Kevin Spencer, Marcus Study. Jeremy, congratulations. I've never seen our revered colleagues up there sweating and shuffling and stammering quite like it. So to give them a bit of a break.
It wasn't me, it was the chap from insurance.
It is, yeah. Jeremy, he doesn't blame them. My question's for you. On the Ed Miliband interview that you did, right at the end of it, I think you thought the cameras were away from it, but you asked him if he was all right.
Yes.
What did you think you did during that interview to upset him? I'm curious, because it's quite unlike your personality to be concerned about the welfare of a politician.
Well, look, Your Holiness, or whatever we're supposed to call you. We've not met before, and I doubt we'll be meeting again. But no, we've not met before. But that's absolute rubbish, and it's simply not true that one spends a lot of time being horrible to people and then is unconcerned about it. I always, even after the famous Michael Howard interview, I always ask them if they're okay. Not all of them, but in that particular case, it was when he had said, you recall during the course of the interview, I recounted a meeting with a bloke on the tube who said that he was locked in a room with Vladimir Putin he'd be left on the floor. And he went on then on some riff about Obama, and he said, "Am I tough enough? Hell yes, I'm tough enough." Now, that had such a ring of inauthenticity to it, I was slightly concerned about him. But you're quite right. I did think the microphone was off. Have you got anything relevant to say? Let's go to microphone number 3 up there.
Hello, Jim Pittman, Stream Claims. I'm after Amanda's bottle of champagne. We call our loss adjusters claims consultants.
Claims
Consultants could be anything, couldn't it?
Could be. Could be.
Do you think
it would be
that'll
your call. I mean, I don't think it would be up to us to decide. I think we should test it out on the public, as with everything. Test it out on them, see what they say. But not bad.
Claims
Good
consultant
start.
is quite good, isn't it?
Yeah. We should
They
test it on the
consult on
public, though,
claims.
because, do they know truly
think-
what that means?
I think that would do for a bottle of champagne, probably.
Think so? Right,
Unless
okay,
someone's
come
got a
to the
better
AXA
one.
stand later. Quick, guys, go and sort it out.
Right, let's have some more questions then, please. Preferably something vaguely relevant. Yeah, you with your hand up there in the middle of number 4. Is there anyone want to have a go after that? All right, okay, off you go.
I would like the panel to comment not on the names or titles of all these folk like loss adjusters. It helps the public if someone would explain what they're there for, and dare I say, on whose side they are.
Who wants to deal with this? No one wants to talk to you. Go back to Northern Ireland or wherever you came from.
If I recall, or I
You'd like to have a go.
recognising the accent, I think that's Tom McGrath. Is that Tom?
That's the real Tom McGrath, yes.
Hi, Tom. How you doing? It's a good call. I think clients are often confused, and we know from our own conversations with them that they think they are talking to a loss adjuster when they're talking to a loss assessor. A loss assessors, those of you in the room, you're very quick off the mark, so you often can get in before the adjuster is in. It can definitely cause confusion. It does go to exactly the same issue, which is, these names, these phrases that we use are all inter-industry and not really about the customer. Yeah. I don't know what we do about going about changing our nomenclature for the different parts of our industry, but it probably needs doing.
What is the difference between a loss assessor and a loss adjuster?
Good question. Tom?
A loss adjuster acts on behalf of the insurance company, generally. Loss assessor acts on behalf of the insured.
No, well, as far as the public are concerned, they're all the enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a claims consultant would be too, I should think. Sorry, do you want to come in here?
No, I mean, I would only just say the same thing. I think it will become less relevant as time progresses, because my own view is that insurers are going to find better ways of settling claims using technology, digital, all sorts of other ways, which will actually mean that customers will get a much quicker, better claim payment without the need for as many of these, these individuals coming and visiting them and making their lives difficult. And I think that going forward, claims handling will be unrecognisable, because technology will just make it a lot easier. So sorry for the claims consultants, stroke loss adjusters, loss assessors in the room. I think your role will become less relevant as time goes on.
Looking good for you up there with the champagne. Right, number 2, please.
Yes, hi, it's Bruce Hetman from McTavish. There's always a lot of ping pong between brokers and insurers blaming each other, but it would be worth putting that aside for a few minutes and actually blaming the customer, because a lot of the theme here is that, we're all feeling sorry for the customer, but in the end, these are contracts and there are laws that sit behind them, and those customers have duties in those contracts. And the commonest cause of a claim not being paid that we see arises from the customer not properly studying their risk, not properly telling the broker what insurance they need to buy, not properly paying the broker, and as a result, when they go to claim, it isn't technically a repudiation. They didn't buy the cover. That's the number one problem we see. And I think we're at a point where, with the new laws, brokers are going to need to speak more openly with their customers about their duties and make sure that they pay them enough money.
Bruce, I think
Do you agree with this?
Do you practice in Liverpool?
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, Bruce this is his expert field, obviously, so I wouldn't challenge you too much. I think you're absolutely right, but I do think that the insurers could still play a role around being clearer about what we will pay and also what we won't pay when the customer buys the policy. And I think I'm thinking more in a consumer sense there, perhaps more in a business sense, where most of these issues tend to arise, so that actually customers know what to expect. And I think that I would defend the customer in that regard. They don't buy insurance day in, day out. That's not their their prime reason for living. Even in small businesses just want to buy the insurance to protect themselves. They're perhaps not as sophisticated as the complex buyers that perhaps you act on behalf of. And I do think we've got to be much clearer about what we'll pay, what we won't pay.
And to be fair, as a consumer, sometimes you do get documents through which say, we will pay if X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
We will not pay if A, B, and C.
Yes. And I think we need to do more of that so that people are not surprised when something bad happens and they're not covered for it. So.
And it's also, I think, it's a rallying cry for brokers, isn't it? It's at the moment we're on the cusp of a situation where more and more small businesses are going to start looking online and trying to do it themselves. And actually, the advice element is going to be just more crucial going forward than ever before. And brokers need to work out how we're going to give advice in the digital era and still be massively relevant, because it is so important that brokers get out there and explain to customers what they need and make sure they understand the promise.
So the questioner invited us to blame the customer, and I'm not going to take that lead because I'm not going to blame the customer. But I do understand customer behaviour in this circumstance, because if I think about personal lines primarily, although I think, as Peter's just talked about, might stray into small commercial, the industry as a whole, whatever that might be, but the industry as a whole has educated customers to shop around and that price is the big deal. We see a lot of customer behaviour that is either generated by customers or is the way that the industry has taught them to behave by a whole plethora of adverts every year saying shop around, we can save you this, we can save you that, switch to get a better deal. And that's of course reinforced by the growth of aggregators, which I have to say at a customer proposition level are absolutely fantastic. Why wouldn't you put your details in once and get hundreds of quotes? What a great proposition. But it fuels shopping around again. Customer experts like Martin Lewis, again encouraging shopping around, and indeed the government saying we should shop around. So everybody is encouraging shopping around. If the only consideration set for shopping around is price, then maybe we get some of the problems that have been talked about. If there is no consideration about the quality of the product and what it covers and the risks that are being covered, if there is no consideration about the claim service and how good it is and is your claim going to be paid, is it going to be paid quickly and efficiently? Thousands of people will phone Ageas today, and a good number of them will be wanting to buy insurance. A lot of them will say, my renewal quote is this, can you beat it? A lot of them will say, I'm looking for insurance at £300. None of them, unfortunately, because we have a fantastic claim service, none of them will say, how good's your claim service? And so we get the sorts of issues that are being talked about.
Good point.
But from a consumer perspective, you really only overcome that if you publicise the claims service. And I don't mean we've got a good one. I mean how many claims are met, how many claims are met in full, how many claims are repudiated versus others in a league chart, because it doesn't mean anything in words to a consumer.
Well, I think you can only do that with your own business. I mean, AXA has started to do that, so we now have the repudiation rates on the AXA website. Later this month, we'll be starting to put claims reviews, so the customer can, as you can on TripAdvisor, compare your experience with holiday destinations. You'll be able to compare the claims experience. So I think that the insurers have got a huge role to do to make it more transparent. Whether customers will ultimately still be interested, whether it still will be price-driven, who knows? But you have to at least make strides to do that, I think.
I think there's another dimension to that question, which is still sticking in the small commercial area, I would say, and that is that if we're going to need to be more efficient in order to deliver product at the price that the client expects, but the product needs to develop around things we know to be events of our current world and our future world, rather than looking always back at what's happened in the past. You take situations like the Kingsway fire in Holborn. If Buncefield didn't prove that denial of access is an inherent requirement of business interruption, then that one certainly has. And I don't know how many times we have to experience those kind of events before it stops being an advised requirement and starts being a fundamental requirement of business interruption. You know, there are things that we need to do as an industry. Back to the one voice, because brokers know what their clients need, underwriters know what their clients are experiencing, and between us, we've got to start making it easier for the client to buy what they need, particularly at the lower end, the less informed end.
Anybody else got a you're holding it. I hope they're going to start looking uncomfortable again soon.
Richard Brownman in Ocean Limited. If you buy a suit cheaply and it falls apart after 6 months, nobody's surprised. If you buy insurance cheaply and it doesn't work after 6 months, everybody's surprised. The two don't compute. But what I have to ask the panel is this. A home insurance is a fairly simple contract, so is a car insurance, yet policies are between 40 and 150 pages long. We expect clients to read them and understand them. They're written in opaque language. Please tell me how this is supportable.
Come on.
It's absolutely not, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to fix. I agree with you completely. Why would a customer want to read that, understand it at all? We have to make it a lot simpler. Say what we're going to pay, say what we're not going to pay, and that's what we're working on. And you know, you've seen the stuff that AXA has done, but the CII have done a fantastic survey in the last few months, and they've got their Made Simple campaign, which is all around listening to what's going on in social media, around all the stuff the customers are talking about that they don't understand. And interestingly, it's not always about the claim, is it, Sandy? It's sometimes a lot about what am I buying, and I think we've got to take that feedback that the CII have got and translate that into our policies, and certainly we'll be working with the CII to do that, because I think we have to listen to all these online conversations that are going on, because then we'll truly understand what customers don't understand. But at the end of the day, as Bruce said, it is still a legal document and it is still based on law. We still have to take that into account. But there's a lot more that we could do.
That doesn't mean it has to be impenetrable.
Agreed.
I have never read an insurance document cover to cover.
I have, unfortunately. So
I bet you have.
To do, and we have to make it better. I agree.
Sorry, there's a question here, number one.
Good morning, Ashley Rogoff. I wonder if I can ask the panel to reflect on the fact that the consumer has benefited enormously in the education sector from publishing data on its success rate. If the FCA required the industry to publish data on the percentage of claims they paid, insurer by insurer, and the speed with which they paid them, customers will be able to identify those that were better and quicker at meeting claims payments.
Doesn't it rather suppose you can compare everything, you can compare like with like easily?
Yeah, but we're all for transparency. We should be looking at all things like that, but transparency right across the piece.
Right, number 4 up there.
Hi, Graham Mons, MD of Hamilton Bond. We're claims consultants and chartered loss adjusters. Sorry, Jeremy. But interestingly, I think there's an awful lot of time being spent here on this point around claims. But it goes back to Peter's opening comment about what is delivering the promise. I think, Amanda, with respect, I think we might be missing the point to say that suddenly everything will be done online and there's no need for claims consultants and chartered loss adjusters. Delivering the promise is about delivering the policy that we're all selling. And at the critical time when something happens, it's not just about settling the claim, it's about finding the positives from this negative event. And we were talking about one message from this marketplace that we're all involved in. Should it not be about doing something constructive at that critical time? And I think claims consultants and adjusters have a huge part to play in delivering that promise at that point. It's about finding the positives out of the negative event that's occurred. And that's what we're all here to do.
Well, that's a rousing speech.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Please.
I think what he's saying is absolutely right. I mean, I'm still old enough to remember I used to actually receive letters from customers saying, "Dear Peter, I appear to have had my factory burnt down last week. Would you mind sending around one of those nice chaps to sort out my claim?" And they used to come in the post. You'd get people sending in claims by post. Now, I think we have an opportunity that when claims are reported, if somebody answers the phone in 2 rings and explains there and then exactly what's going to happen, who's going to arrive, who they represent, what they're going to do, and they get it done, and that person arrives the next day and delivers the promise, well, that's the utopia that we all seek.
Yes, but Peter, people used to go to Blockbusters to hire videos, and they used to think it was a great experience. People now downstream on Netflix. The world moves on. So I'm sorry, but you feel like, you know, obviously, you would say that, wouldn't you, about claims consultants and loss adjusters? The world is going to move on. Technology is going to help us, and people's expectations are they're not not prepared to wait a week to see somebody. If you can FaceTime them and they can show you the damage that's been done in their property and we could settle the claim within 10 to 15 minutes, why wouldn't we do that? There are ways now of empathising with the customer. I'm not saying digital is the only way forward. It's definitely not. And there's always going to be room for people to go out and spend time with the customer. But there's also going to be new ways of doing things, and we have to move on. And if we don't, somebody else will come into our industry and they will do it for us. So, you know, you don't...
I think we're talking about scale of losses, though, aren't we?
But we
Yeah,
are.
there are small losses and there are large losses.
But also, we can't bury our head in the sand and say, because we've always done it like that, it's the right way to do it going forward. We have to think about different ways of doing things.
It's very interesting. I mean, this is about the third or fourth time so far uninvited the digital opportunities or difficulties have intruded into this conversation. Can you just address this question of digital opportunities?
It's something that keeps me awake at night because it could be these guys could all be toast very shortly. I'm more parochial than that. I'm worrying about my own business, and we're over half of Ageas is involved in motor insurance of some kind or another. In the not too distant future, if we have a country full of driverless cars, that changes the profile of my business quite considerably. And I say that only partially as science fiction, because that may well be happening and happening sooner than we think. But it's certainly true. I absolutely agree with Amanda when digital as a way of being more efficient in our business, as a way of communicating with people, a way of handling things a lot more efficiently and almost in real time. That's a tide that's happening. So to be in denial about it is absolutely the wrong approach.
But and would you be perfectly happy dealing with, you know, letting someone show you their, instead of sending a loss adjuster, they say, oh look, there we are. You see all the damage that's been done.
No, but people that live in my house that are considerably younger than me absolutely would be.
Absolutely.
Would they?
Absolutely would be. And so if we do not address and do not provide products and services for the younger generation who've grown up with those things, then we'll lose them completely from this industry. Yeah. So
you're just sounding like another
right.
scared old person.
Now, I'm certainly an old person. I'm not entirely sure I'm
not
scared
as old
about
as I am. Please.
Well, I was just going to say that I think I'm looking around the room and I can see quite a few of my peers in terms of age and experience in the industry. And I think most of the brokers in the room will feel that the digital world has materially invaded their space already. Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, household
to their
motor,
disadvantage?
We have had to adjust and change around the new distribution.
Dear.
I know, it's so sad, isn't it? The digital world and the advent of aggregators has already materially interrupted the broking industry. So a lot of the brokers in the room are also digital providers. And I don't necessarily think that digital means no advice. It means different advice in a different way.
As they used to say in David Hunt's day, get with the beat, Daddy-o.
Oh, I can Snapchat with the best of them.
It's more than I can do. Go on.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, but not for 1 minute so we bury your head in sand. It's about adapting. And when we're talking about losses, there's a massive scale issue. Yeah. If you've got some curtains damaged, then yes, you can take a picture. If you've got a factory that's burnt down, it's a slightly different situation. Yeah. So it's a scale issue. And I was talking about the response time and the way we deal with claims and digitally keeping people updated. Absolutely, all of those things are vitally important. But I don't think claims consultants are going to disappear. And I think it's a crucial part of delivering the promise. If a client has somebody professional turning up the next day to actually help them sort out that mess and get them back on their feet, I think clients will be eternally grateful rather than having to try and do it all themselves and try and solve this awful situation remotely.
But it is a point around generation, and I think to just go back to the point around apprenticeships, which I think is a fantastically well-made point. If we look around this room, are we representative of our future customers? And I think until we get apprentices in, until we get a proportion of the type of people that are our customers in our businesses telling us about what is required, we won't know. So Julie, you're right. You know, we're all sort of the same generation, and we all are used to doing things in the same way. What would our 16-year-olds say? What would the 20-year-olds say? What is their expectation? And we need more of those sort of people in our business telling us what they want to the future, rather than us assuming we want it the way that we have always had it. And that, you know, that to me is absolutely fundamental.
This isn't a group of people selected for their gender, ethnic or age diversity, really.
It is not. It is not.
Only a
It's a
question.
very good point.
There's a question down here, please.
Hi, Graham Trudgill from Bieber and user of borrowmydoggy.com. Lord Hunt said that new majority government chance for opportunity. So to each of the panel members, if they could have one wish, one ask of the new government, what would it be?
Who wants to start this? Anyone?
Okay.
You haven't thought what you'd like to ask?
Of course I have.
Go on then.
But no, I'm going to steer clear of the personal stuff. And for the industry...
No, don't, please. It's great
no,
fun.
I'll stick with the industry.
Talk about the industry then.
For the industry, I work for a multinational firm, and keeping that level playing field and keeping the London market the national treasure that it is absolutely critical. So to the point that was made about making sure that regulation is proportionate is vital to being competitive in the UK and in the London market. And the London market provides protection for businesses and people and events all over the world, and it will only continue to do that and be the national treasure that it is if regulation remains proportionate.
Well, for me, if I was talking personally, as a resident of this region, I'd be intrigued about the Northern Powerhouse, and I'd be intrigued about how the government's going to get people from Manchester to talk to people in Liverpool and vice versa. But the industry ask would be to pick up on the manifesto, the Conservative manifesto promise for more spending on roads. We work at Ageas, work very closely with the Road Safety Foundation, and whilst spending on roads it may well be a good thing, there are good and bad roads in terms of the construct and design from a road safety point of view. So we'd be looking for the new government to live up to its manifesto promise on spending, but also influence that spending so that new roads that are built, and indeed road improvements, have road safety built into that design.
Have you stuck in a lift with David Cameron?
David Cameron, certainly. I mean, the regulation point is far too important for us to ignore, and just the proportionality of that regulation, and just not tarring us with the same brushes that have been applied to the financial services industry more widely on pensions and so on. So that's the big one. And on a personal topic, I just think the taxation system, the concept of actually taking money away from people on the one hand and then giving it back to them on tax credits on the other, the simplification that could go on in that body is just enormous.
First, I'd asked him how to deal with you, but obviously it's too late now. The second thing I'd say to him is what are they going to do for the 99.3% of businesses, of SMEs in the UK, to help them to get advice, legal advice, good financial advice in an affordable way. So speaking it from a pure business customer point of view, that's I think, an important thing for them to do.
As regards to the industry, Amanda?
I'm thinking of it from a customer's perspective.
Oh,
from an industry perspective, compensation, if we're talking about deafness as being one of the key issues for insurers are dealing with at the minute, why do lawyers earn 3 times more than a claimant on a deafness claim? Lots of things like that, but I'm sure nobody really wants to hear that.
He'd want to get out of that lift fast, wouldn't he? Right, yes. We're going to be very quick because we've got 2 minutes and 7 seconds left. Okay. Number one.
Just on back to claims, if I may, because it was quite an exciting part of this discussion today. Would this issue of apparent concerns about the speed and efficiencies around claim settlement, would it be helped by imposing a modest amount of regulation on insurers? Because 2 things happen when you make a claim. First of all, the insurance company has to admit liability, accept liability under the terms of the policy. Secondly, you move to work out the quantum or how much is to be paid. If there are complaints around the claims process, it tends to relate to the first part, which is insurer procrastination and vacillation over acceptance of liability. And should perhaps, as we have regulation in all other parts of the industry, should insurers suffer some regulation requiring them to admit liability within 28 days in relation to a claim?
Or not necessarily admit it or deny it within 28 days. Right, what about that?
Well, I'm missing the fact that we are missing any regulation, Paul. So I think we are fairly well regulated. So we're not without regulation ourselves.
Is there a regulation that says you have to admit or deny liability within 28 days? There should be, shouldn't there?
No, there isn't. I don't know, because would we have all the claim information within that time? Would it be clear? We could end up making a decision that was ultimately wrong. So I don't know. I'm absolutely for looking at it more transparently, but I'm not sure that is the right answer. I don't know. I've not given it more than 10 seconds thought. So.
I struggle
Well,
to
you
see
should
that.
have given it more than 10 seconds
But he's only
thought.
just bloody asked it.
You've never thought maybe we could be a little quicker?
No, we've thought about that, but admitting liability in 20 different...
Decide whether you should do it. Come on.
I struggle to see that this is a problem that's solved by regulation. I think it's a very simple thing to say. It's a very difficult thing to put in practice. But fundamentally, it's about whether a customer who's paid a premium thinks they think, actually, I paid X pounds for my policy. I thought it was covering me for these things. The claim's been dealt with either well or not. Either that was, on reflection, after the claim is settled, it was either a good experience or a bad experience. They are the final arbiter of whether it's good or bad. And a regulator telling you whether you should have admitted liability in 28 days or 29 days or 35 days isn't going to help, I'm afraid.
What a surprising answer. Do you like to have the last words quickly here as your brokers?
I mean, just sort of playing out the conversation we've had so far in my head, I can't help thinking that more visibility over how claims actually get handled, what does happen, time to settle, the admittance of liability, the repudiation, all of that stuff, if it was more visible, clients would start to make decision on quality of service. It's not visible.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And also, stop the underwriting at the point of claim, do the underwriting in advance. It plays to Mr. McTavish's comments about making sure that both parts understand the contract before there's a claim. So then when there is a claim, you already know that the guy is a proper claimant and it's going to be legitimate. You don't have to do all that underwriting at the point of loss.
Good. All right, look, on your behalf then, let me thank our 4 panellists for being such good sports today and taking it all on the chin. Thank you very much. Excellent.